Is Satisfactory worth it? In this video, I'm going to give you all the facts about Satisfactory so that you can decide for yourself whether or not this game is for you and if it's worth buying. Satisfactory is a survival open world builder game done in first person mode. It is quite similar to other games like Factorio and other tycoon games in that genre. Except for in this one, you're playing it first person and you're way more immersed into the game. So what is Satisfactory? You are thrown onto an unknown alien planet by a company called Fixit Incorporated, and it is your job to gather resources and supply them via a massive space elevator. And the longer and the more you play this game, the more complex the resource becomes. So at the beginning, you will start out by sending basic materials like metals, and then later on you will start having to send computers, engine, and even nuclear fuel rods. So the entire concept of the game is to build a factory. That's also why it's in the name, Satisfactory. Because due to the amount of elements and resources you have to send to them, you cannot just do this by your own by digging it with your hand. You have to make a factory that produces everything for you. That means everything from just mining up basic materials to crafting it into the higher tier. You can research all of it and make it automatic. So early game, you will start out by manually having to dig out iron from the ground. And then you will start making machines dig it out for you, and then also making the machines craft it into iron plates. And then you start going up and up in complexity. You make these iron plates into iron rods, and before you know it, you suddenly need 6 different components to make, for instance, a computer. So this entire thing requires an assembly line of maybe 22 different machines that all produce one element. And this is the entire concept of the game. You start off with basic components, you then make an assembly line that construct these together to make something even more advanced. This then unlocks your next level, and then you make more advanced technology and components over time. And all these resources are scoured out through the entire world, which brings me to the world itself. It is a massive handmade world and is very thought out in terms of where resources are. When you start off the game, you will have 4 different starting zones. You will have an easy beginner mode, 2 a bit harder, and then the difficult one being the desert. And all these zones have different pros and cons, but some of them also have very unique resources that you can only find in that allocated biome. So even if you start in, say, the desert, you still have to venture over to the others to find resources that you need from there. And typically the difficulty of these zones are measured by how far things are spread apart. So if you compare the easiest to the hardest zone, the easiest zone has a lot of different materials, but there's not a whole lot of it. So you can easily build up a basic factory from it. But if you want to make a massive factory, it is way better starting in the more difficult zones like the desert, where you have more open space, you have more concentrated amount of resources. But at the end, you need all of the different resources from all the different biomes, which is also why you need to explore. So as I mentioned before, the entire world is made by hand. So there is a lot of different elements and a lot of different elevations. Now some zones will be really beautiful and easy to maneuver, and other zones will be really dangerous, filled with harsh elements like poison, and will require different tools to even conquer it. Which is also one of the reasons I love this game. The diversity in terms of the visuals and the exploring in the entire world itself is so nice. Which brings me into the visuals of the game. The game looks absolutely fantastic. The visuals are nice and pleasing. It is overall a very nice looking game. And the same thing can be said about the music and sound design. The music is nice and chill. It really brings you into the mood of just a relaxing game. Because that is what this game is. It is a full out just relaxing and doing calculations in your head, trying to figure out how everything works. If you love relaxing, if you love numbers, optimization, you will really like this game. So in terms of some of the more gameplay mechanics, we already touched on the early game and what later game is like. Now this game differs compared to other games in this genre. Comes a lot down to how the fight system and food system works. It is a very chill game. It is not like Minecraft or Factorio, in the regard that you don't really have a lot of enemies. There are a few monsters, but they don't really do a whole lot, and also you can kite them very easily or just drive over them with your car. So it's not really a game you pick up if you want high excitement, high octane in terms of attacking things. Now there are some creatures that are quite difficult, and some of them you will have to use different weapons for. For instance, at early game, you start with a basic saber. You can then make, for instance, a more lightsaber kind of thing. You can also make ranged weapons like guns. But for the most part, the entire game is pretty easy. It is not a game you pick up in terms of wanting a difficult game with high octane gameplay. It is more a fun, relaxed, satisfying game. Now, in terms of building, you can either be a complete idiot like me and just make big flat platforms that look terrible, but just function as a whole. Or you can, of course, also make really beautiful structures. You have tons of options, you can color things, and basically the bigger you make it, the easier it is to make it look really nice. But you can, of course, also just make giant cubes and just really go all in on optimization. But it has a nice building system, you can build easily. It is very easy to expand and make bigger structures. But of course also, the more structures you make, you will also need more power. So early game you start off with just basic biomass producers, then you start going to coal production, water pumps, and even nuclear power. And of course the bigger, more advanced systems you make, the more power you need. So there's a very fine balancing act that you need to find between producing as much advanced resource as you can, but also maintaining enough power to keep it all going. And all of this is done by the research tree. And you actually have multiple different research trees. You have a tech tree with a molecular analysis and machine, and this one is based mainly on exploring. Out in the world, you will find different resources you can then go back and then research, and this will then unlock stuff for you. Now you also have research itself, which is unlocked via the space elevator. So for instance, the more advanced your entire base gets, the more resource and the more advanced resource you have to send up to fix it via the space elevator. And there are 8 different tiers. So as an example, for tier 7, you might just send up 500 computers, but you're only producing 1 computer a minute right now. Do you either wait for that, or do you try and improve your amount of production in terms of making computers? But then of course you need everything else, right? Then your entire assembly machine now has to be up in production. And you have to get more basic materials like iron. And it's a very big ripple down effect, which I love. I personally fell in love with this game very early on. As soon as I saw you had to place down conveyor belts and splitters, I was hooked. And then once you saw the entire world, you placed down the space elevator, it is a very immersive world you are in. And where this game differs to other games is there's no immediate danger to your factory. There's no base defense from enemies, there are no survival elements like food or water. The game is purely based on building and exploring. And once you explore and you build, what usually happens is that you have your main hub where everything is located, and then you have outposts. In these outposts, you for instance have one that is generating coal, you have a power plant down by the water, you have an outpost in the opposite end of the world collecting quartz for you because you don't have any near you. And then you assemble all this together via different means. You can have trade routes, you can have trains, you can have cars, or a massive conveyor belt through the entire world. But you collect all these resources together to make massive constructions. Now the game is still in early access, but they're consistently updating it. When I first started playing, there was only a tier or 2, but now there's 8 total tiers. And every time there's a new update, they also change major things about the game. So you can actually play the game every time a new update comes out and it'll still feel relatively new. That's also why there's a lot of replayability in the game. I have played the game 4 different times now, with maybe a year or so pause in between. And every time I come back, there are major changes and they are mostly good, along with new research to make and just way more complex things to unlock. And this is all done by the amazing developers Coffee Stain Studios. This is hands down my favorite game developer company. They also make stuff like Goat Simulator, and they're very open about their games and what they're making. If you go on their YouTube channel, they're very active. They let their players know what's actually going on, and they take critique into advisement and actually fix things, unlike some other big companies that I won't mention. So the game is great, the developers are great, but there are of course still some negatives. Now performance overall is good. It is a smooth game, although once you start building massive structures, you will notice some FPS issues. Also, autosave for me takes like 5 to 10 seconds when my game just freezes entirely, because I've just built that much. There are a few bugs. There are some places in the map where you will fall through the entire world, but it is overall very low. One of the weird things is probably the enemy AI. It's a very basic AI and it's a bit weird, and once you learn how to kite enemies, they don't really provide any challenge at all. Especially if you have a car and just run them over with that. But for an early access game, it is very well optimized. In terms of multiplayer, it functions really well. We didn't have any issues at all. We've been playing for multiple years. And it's a great game to play with friends, of course. You have more people to help you with the workload, setting up all the different outposts and the buildings you need and require. Now, there isn't really a story. In this game, they've definitely focused more on the gameplay than the story itself, which I actually like, because the gameplay is so good. When I was playing the game, I didn't really think about the story at all. I wasn't questioning, why am I doing this? What's happening now? If you have the correct mindset of just playing the game and just having fun and building an incredible factory, then it doesn't matter. I kind of like the mysterious part of it, as you don't really know why you're doing it. So in conclusion, it is an incredible game. The gameplay is incredible. The visuals are very nice and pleasing. It is a very immersive game. It is fantastic builder and assembly line creator. It is very rare you find games with this amazing gameplay that has so much replayability. So if you think this game looks good, I can tell you already now, I think you will really enjoy it. If you found this video useful, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.